I want to talk today a little bit about my latest blog post and talking about key leadership skills. So there are like a ton of different leadership skills. I just pulled out a few that I think are really key and important to great leaders. And the fabulous part is that they're really great to being good human beings. So I think that if you are a great leader, you are inherently acting in a way that is kind and empowering. So the first one is growth mindset. So growth mindset is a concept by Carol Dweck, and there is a TED talk out there that you can look up as well in my blog post. So Carol Dweck talks about learning is a lifelong process, and that it is a reframing of our thoughts in many ways. That she talks about the power of yet. I can't do this yet. And so it's the belief that we aren't inherently born with skills and knowledge, that we learn and practice those, and that failure isn't a negative thing, it's an opportunity to grow. So she really talks about the power of yet. I can't do this yet. I can't run a marathon yet, but I can learn, I can read, and I can practice, and I can get there. And so she doesn't believe that anyone can do absolutely anything, that everyone is Einstein, but the belief in a growth mindset is that everyone can improve and can get better. And so that is essential to being a leader. We always need to be learning and growing and practicing and trying to improve ourselves. And so when that is a fundamental belief, that makes you a better leader. It's also not about you. Really, I can say, well, I said it this way, they should get it, or I did it this way, they should get it, they should know. Really, it's about how do I meet them where they're at? And so we talk about disc profiles all the time. If I'm an S and I'm talking to a D, I can't expect them to meet me at my S-ness. I have to meet them in their D-ness. So I better learn to be brief. I better learn to be direct. I better learn to focus on the results, right? And so that becomes really important. If they are a visual learner, that I'm giving them written instructions. If they're an auditory learner, I'm giving them oral instructions. If they're a kinesthetic learner, I'm working on doing it with them and giving them the opportunity to physically do something to practice it. So that's all really important to um, to leadership, right? Another key concept is that you want to empower others. And so I liken this to anyone who has had kids and had to get them dressed and it's painfully slow, or they want it, I do it myself, and you're like, oh, but I can do this so much quicker, I can do this so much better. They don't do it the way I want to, they don't wear the clothes that I think that they should wear when they go out into public. And really, it's about allowing them to learn and make mistakes and to be there to guide them and support them when they fail, and um, to give them help. And so it isn't about saying you have to do it this way. It's about saying this is the end result now. Let me support you as you figure out how to do that. And so if we empower them, then they will get better and better and better. Right? We don't want to be feeding our kids forever, but we don't want to be feeding our kids into adulthood, and so we have to teach them. And the same thing with leadership. And so we have to empower people to be able to do the things and understand that they aren't going to do them the same way we are, and that is okay. And we have to let that go. So another key skill is to listen more than you talk. So they talk about coaching, and coaching should be about 70% listening and 30% talking, and the 30% talking should be primarily asking questions. So leadership, again, it isn't about you, it's about the other person. So listen and ask good questions, tie it into empowering them, ask them questions to help them figure things out rather than you just giving them the answer all the time. You want to share praise and accept blame. So Jim Collins, big business writer, in his book Good to Great, talks about level 5 leadership, and he said this is the highest level of leaders. And in businesses and organizations that went from good to great, they had this concept of a level 5 leader, and they were the person, they talk about the window in the mirror. And so in the case of praise, they stand behind their people and say, look at this amazing team that did this awesome thing. And when something doesn't go well, they stand in front of them and say, I didn't lead them well. I need to look in the mirror and I need to figure out how I could have done this better. Could I have encouraged them more? And so they accept the blame. And far too often, I think we've all had leaders where something goes well and they're like, oh yeah, I did this great thing, even though it wasn't really them, but they're quick to pass off the blame. And so we really want to be the opposite of that. Um, Great leaders have the willingness to have a difficult conversation. And there are, yes, they do show interest, Rick, for sure. And so part of that is through the asking questions, get to know the other people. Be willing to have difficult conversations. And there are very, very few people who really go like, oh, I can't wait to go have this really hard conversation. Like there are a few out there, but they're pretty rare. Most of us kind of get a little queasy and go, oh, I don't know, like I'm feeling a little off about this. But leaders are willing to actually have them, and they can do them in a kind way. It doesn't mean you have to come down. It doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. It just means that you need to be willing to have them. The best way to become more comfortable having them is to have them and to practice. Find a friend, do a role play before you have to go in and have one. Have them ask you questions and work through it that way. And lead with your heart first and an open mind. And so I love the Brene Brown story where she says, I need to believe that everyone is doing the best that they can. And it's so, so easy to lose sight of that. And she tells a story of her husband, who is a pediatrician, and she says to him, Steve, do you believe that everyone is just doing the best that they can? And he says, I don't know, I have to think about it. And he comes back and says, I don't know if they are, but my life is better when I believe that they are. So when we believe that somebody isn't trying to do something just to piss us off or to make us angry or because they're an asshole, then we approach it in a different way. So instead of saying like, why the hell did you do this thing? We might say like, help me understand. And so when we walk in with an open heart and an open mind, we are better able to listen and to really help people. So Maya Angelou talks, she has that quote about people won't remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so think about, how are you walking out of this interaction? How are you making people feel? And work on making them feel better. And so I remember having a leader, and I had just gone back to work after having my first child. She was 17 months. And about 3 weeks into teaching, I found out the day home was closing and I had a week's notice. And for anyone who has dealt with childcare, it's a stressful thing to figure out. And I walked in, I was coming back. She was a brand new principal to our school, so I didn't know her. I didn't have a relationship. And I went into her trying my best not to be upset and cry because I didn't know her, and say like, I don't know quite what we're going to do. I'll figure it out, but I just want you to know I'm a little distracted right now. And without missing a beat, she said, well, you'll bring her here until you figure it out. And I'm like, this is a junior high school and she's 17 months. And he goes, and we'll figure it out. I'd rather have you in the classroom and the kids will love her. And so it's been, that same kid now is 18 and a half. So this is 17 years ago. And I still remember how that made me feel. So those are some key concepts. I've talked about them in my blog, which you can read if you are interested.